My name is Ethan McCall. I'm 26 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the people I trusted most after they left me behind like trash, and walked straight into handcuffs when I came back. It was supposed to be our big family trip, the one we'd planned for nearly a year, a cabin getaway in the Rockies, just the four of us. My mum had suggested it after everything we'd been through lately. My dad had a heart attack the previous fall, my sister Rachel had gone through a messy divorce, and I'd just been laid off from my job at a digital media startup. We were all burnt out, worn down, and the idea was simple: unplug, reconnect, heal. I needed it more than I'd admitted to anyone. I'd been feeling ... hollow, useless, like I was constantly trying to earn my place in a family that didn't even notice I was drowning. The morning we were supposed to leave, I overslept by 10 minutes. Just 10. I had stayed up late, packing, anxious about everything, double-checking the chargers, my medication, my hiking boots. When I woke up, heart pounding, I threw on my jacket, grabbed my bag, and ran outside expecting to see them loading up the SUV. But the driveway was empty. At first I laughed a little. Maybe they ran to get gas. Maybe they were picking up breakfast. I checked my phone. No texts, no missed calls. I waited. I kept refreshing the group chat. After half an hour, I started calling. No answer. I texted. "Where are you guys?" Nothing. I sat on the porch with my suitcase for hours, cold coffee in hand, stomach twisting. It wasn't until 2 p.m. that I got the voicemail from Rachel. Her voice was flat, a little too casual. "Hey, Ethan, look. We figured you'd understand. It's just been a lot lately. We'll catch up when we're back." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just ... abandonment. They left me. On purpose, I sat on that porch until the sun went down. Something inside me cracked. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, completely still, like if I moved, I'd fall apart. That was the moment everything broke. I realized then that I wasn't just excluded. I was disposable to them. An afterthought. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later, when I returned home from a walk to clear my head. I turned the corner onto my street and saw the squad cars parked in front of my apartment building. Lights, flashing, officers waiting. Not for me, but for them. I wasn't always the outsider in my family. Growing up, it was just the four of us. Me, my older sister Rachel, our dad Greg, and our mum Diane. We weren't rich, but we were close in the way that mattered. Or at least I thought we were. I was the quiet one, bookish, observant. The kind of kid who noticed the tension in a room before anyone spoke it out loud. Rachel, on the other hand, was a star. Prom queen, debate team, a full ride to law school. She made partner at a high-profile firm downtown before she was 30, and my parents never stopped talking about it, even when I graduated with honors. From journalism school, it felt like they clapped more politely than proudly. I took a different path. Journalism, storytelling, chasing truth. I bounced between freelance gigs after the media layoffs started. I ran a small podcast. I edited video for non-profits. I made enough to get by, and even though I loved what I did, I always sensed it wasn't enough for them. They didn't say it, but the silence in their smiles was clear. I was the underachiever, the soft one, the one who didn't quite fit into their curated version of success. Still, I showed up. Every holiday, every birthday. I took care of Dad when he collapsed on the stairs last year, drove him to physical therapy twice a week, made his low-sodium meals. I even moved back home for a stretch to help out, turning down a job opportunity in LA just to be closer. And then they just left me. That cabin trip wasn't just a vacation. It was supposed to be a turning point, a reset. Mum said it would help us get back to who we were. I needed that. I was fragile more than I let on. I'd been battling this low-grade, creeping depression for months. Losing my job only made it worse. I told them I didn't feel like myself. I told them I was struggling, and they left anyway. The night they left, I sat on the porch for hours. At first, I was stunned. Then I cried like a kid. Big, messy, chest-taking sobs. I drank half a bottle of whiskey, and as the streetlights flickered on, I scrolled through our group chat. They were still using it, as if I'd never been part of it at all. Pictures of s'mores, of the cabin view, a video of Rachel laughing, marshmallow stuck to her lip, and then a message from Mum, or maybe Rachel, so peaceful without all. The drama, my drama, is that how they saw me? That was the moment the numbness turned into something else. Fire, cold and steady. I stopped crying. I sat there in the dark and started to remember things. Not just what had happened, but what I'd overlooked. Little inconsistencies. Dad's retirement account that never added up. Rachel asking me to ghostwrite a letter to one of her clients a few months back. Something about a whistleblower, she said. Just a messy HR thing. Mum signing some legal forms last year after her surgery. Something about power of attorney, which I now realized she hadn't fully understood. It all felt strange at the time, but I hadn't pressed. I trusted them. I figured they had it handled. But sitting there, scrolling through that group chat like I was watching a show I used to be in but had been written out of, something clicked. This wasn't just emotional neglect. Something darker was underneath it. Something they didn't want me near. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like crying. I felt like uncovering the truth. A few days after they left me behind, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went into my dad's home office. He always kept it locked. But I still remembered the code. Same one he used since I was a teenager. My sister's birthday. That detail stung more than I expected, but I pushed past it. The office was quiet, sterile, like it had been frozen in time. I opened the bottom file drawer and started flipping through folders. At first, it was just old business documents, client files, tax returns, basic stuff. But then I found a folder labeled Archive, Personal. Inside were checks, signed ones, big amounts all made out to Rachel. The weird part, they were from my dad's old company account, the one that should have been closed when he sold the business after his heart attack. The company was legally dissolved, or so I thought. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. There were fake invoices from fake vendors, wire transfers with no clear service tied to them. Most of it led back to a secondary account once set up under my mum's name. But Mum was never part of the business. She barely even checked her own email. She didn't know any of this was happening. I recognized the signature on the forms authorizing the transfers. It wasn't hers. It was traced, sloppily, too. That's when I felt it, deep in my gut. This wasn't just a family trip I got. Excluded from this was a cover-up, a scheme, and I was never meant to find it. But they forgot who they left behind. They forgot that I wasn't just the struggling younger brother or the quiet kid who kept to himself. I was a journalist, a researcher, a storyteller with a trained eye for inconsistencies, and I never forgot a password, especially not Rachel's. She once asked me to help her rewrite a letter for a client. Something sensitive, she said. I thought it was HR drama, maybe a hostile employee. She said she needed to soften the tone. I wrote it in 15 minutes and didn't think twice. But now, remembering the names, I decided to check her shared drive, and the files were still there. Client correspondence, case notes, legal threats, confidential memos. One name came up again and again. Harlan Ventures. I googled it, and that's when it all came crashing down. Harlan Ventures was under federal investigation, a multi-million-dollar securities fraud case. I dug deeper and cross-referenced everything she'd asked me to help with. My stomach dropped. The letter I'd written wasn't just some HR memo. It was part of a corporate response to silence a whistleblower. They were intimidating someone who was trying to expose the fraud. I had unknowingly helped them do it. They used me, my sister used me as a tool in a crime. My dad financed it. And my mum, they dragged her into it without her knowing. Suddenly, that peaceful cabin trip felt like something else entirely. A celebration, a circle of trust, one I was never part of. Because deep down, they knew I'd be the one to ask questions, the one to pull the thread. They left me behind not because I was difficult or dramatic, but because I was dangerous to their secret. And now I had it in my hands. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after I uncovered everything. My mind was spinning, and my body felt like it was vibrating with something between fury and panic. These were my parents, my sister, the people who raised me, who were supposed to protect me, and they were committing serious crimes. Laundering money through Dad's old business contacts and funneling it through accounts in Mum's name to make everything look clean. The more I looked, the more obvious it became. If it ever came to light, Mum would be the one on paper. She'd be the fall person, and me. I'd already been looped in, however unknowingly. My fingerprints were on that letter. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was implicated, and I couldn't unsee any of it. At first I told myself I'd confront them when they got back. I'd look them in the eye and demand answers. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized something dark they weren't going to confess. They'd deny it, gaslight me, maybe even find a way to turn it around on me. I could already hear Rachel's voice in my head. You misunderstood. You're being paranoid. This isn't what you think it is. I knew that tone. She'd used it before when she lied to Dad about the medical bills. When she insisted she didn't use our mum's signature without permission. She was always so convincing, so composed, but I had the receipts now, and I wasn't the same scared kid anymore. I was done being manipulated, so I did what I do best. I documented everything. I started organizing files, all the emails, the voice memos she'd sent me asking to revise legal language to sound less aggressive, the text messages I'd archived over the years, even the voicemail she left after the trip. I backed it all up to a hidden cloud drive and encrypted it. Then I reached out to someone I knew from a podcast network I used to freelance for, someone in their investigative division. I laid it out carefully, cautiously, asking what it would take. For them to run a story like this, they said, "We'll take it, if it's solid." So I made it solid. I connected the money trails. I laid out the shell companies, the altered signatures, the pattern of fraud. I even included a timeline, mapping out when my dad's health started failing and when Rachel started stepping in to help with the finances. It painted a picture, a damning one. But I still felt that doubt crawling in the back of my mind. Was I really doing this? Was I really about to report my own family? I kept asking myself, what if I'm wrong? What if they just made a few bad choices? But deep down, I knew the truth. They didn't forget me on that trip. They didn't accidentally loop me into a criminal scheme. They made decisions, ruthless, calculated ones. And they would have thrown me under the bus if things had gone south. Just like they were about to do to Mum. That was my final straw. I went to the sec I brought. The files, the documents, the voice recordings. I walked into that cold, glass-paneled building with my stomach in knots, handed over a flash drive, and told the agent everything. Names, dates, accounts. I even told them about the letter I'd helped write, how I thought it was harmless, until I connected the dots. The agent didn't say much, just nodded and thanked me. I left the building shaking, part of me terrified, another part strangely calm, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for years. And then I waited. When my family came back from their perfect vacation, I wasn't at the house. I'd already moved out, but I made sure I was nearby, parked down the street, watching from the corner like a ghost. I saw the SUV pull up, dusty from the mountains. They stepped out laughing, sun-kissed and glowing like they hadn't just destroyed a piece of me days earlier. Rachel was wearing sunglasses and carrying an overpriced weekender bag. Dad looked healthier than he had in months. Mum, sweet and clueless, was humming something. It looked like a postcard scene. And then the black SUVs pulled up, unmarked at first. Then the doors opened and the uniforms stepped out. Federal agents, local officers. It happened fast, shouting, hands in the air, Miranda rights being read. Rachel dropped her sunglasses. Dad tried to argue, but it didn't matter. They were both handcuffed in front of the neighbors. I saw Mum freeze completely. She didn't even speak, just stood there with her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't process what was happening. I watched it all from the car, heart pounding, and felt something strange rise up in me. Not joy, not revenge, exactly, just clarity. Later that night, I returned to the house. It was empty now, quiet. Still, I walked through the front door like I was walking into a memory. I sat in the same living room where they used to laugh, where Rachel used to boast about winning cases, where Dad lectured me about pulling my weight and finding a real job. I sat there in the silence for a long time and let it hit me. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the full weight of what I'd done, but also the justice. The truth had come out, not in some explosive confrontation, not in a screaming match, just in quiet, meticulous facts. Mum was cleared. I had made sure of that. I gave the investigators everything they needed to prove she had no idea what they were doing. That was the only thing that still mattered to me, that she wouldn't pay for their sins. And as I sat there in the house they left me behind in, I realized I hadn't just exposed a crime. I had ended a lie, a years-long illusion that I didn't belong, that I was somehow lesser, and I had done it not by screaming for their attention, but by walking away and letting the truth speak louder than I ever could. But it wasn't over. A week after the arrests, after the headlines started making their quiet rounds in the finance sections and the podcast I helped produce went live, I got a letter. Not from the court, not from an attorney, from Rachel. Her handwriting was still the same sharp, deliberate, a little dramatic in its curls. The envelope was plain, but I knew immediately who it was from. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me expected some kind of apology, or at least an explanation, but no. Inside was a single page, handwritten, no greeting. Just, "You destroyed us. You could have just talked to us. You're not better than we are." I read that line 3 times. That's the thing Rachel never understood. I didn't want to be better. I didn't want revenge, not in the way she thought. I just wanted to matter. I wanted to be seen. And when I wasn't, when they left me on that porch with my suitcase in silence, I finally realized that I never would, at least not by them. They only saw me as useful when it served them, invisible when it didn't. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I posted the full story anonymously on a whistleblower podcast I used to work for. They agreed to publish it under the pseudonym I chose, The Forgotten Son. It was raw, every detail of how they left me, how I found the fraud, how I handed over the evidence. We didn't name names. No one knew it was me, but the story. It spread like wildfire. 5 million views in 48 hours. It went viral across platforms, TikTok clips, Reddit threads, even think pieces on toxic family loyalty and financial abuse. People left comments that gutted me. This broke me. I know what it's like to be the invisible sibling. The line about the group chat photos that destroyed me. Justice has never tasted so cold. They didn't know it was my voice they were hearing through the distortion filter. They didn't know that quiet pauses were real, that I had cried between takes, had to re-record the last section 3 times because I couldn't get through it without shaking. But I knew, and so did my family, sitting in their jail cells, watching the world dissect our lives without knowing the names. Rachel had always cared about appearances, about keeping her image spotless, and now she was just a shadow in someone else's story. She got 7 years, fraud and obstruction, no early parole. The judge was brutal, said the exploitation of her own mother's identity showed moral rot. Dad got 5, reduced to 2 with parole, partly due to health and age. He barely made eye contact during the hearing. Just sat there, like a man who realized too late that the empire he built had collapsed under his own daughter's ambition. And Mum called me. It was 2 weeks after the sentencing. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. Her voice cracked. The second she said my name, she cried for 5 minutes straight, told me she was sorry, that she should have asked more questions, should have noticed when things didn't feel right, that she'd ignored too much, assumed too much. I just listened. I didn't know what to say. My mum wasn't innocent, not completely, but she wasn't malicious. She was just tired and trusting. I told her I loved her, because I did. I do, but I didn't go visit. Not yet. 6 months later, I moved to Portland. I needed a clean break, a place where no one knew me as the kid who got left behind, or the guy with the family scandal, just Ethan. I found a small apartment downtown with creaky floors and a view of the river, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I got a job as a podcast producer for a storytelling network, not freelance, not temp, full-time, benefits, purpose. They hired me because of the anonymous piece. They didn't know it was me at first, but when they found out, they didn't flinch, they said. That took guts. I didn't feel brave, but I nodded anyway. My story is still out there. People still message the show or tag it on social media. The guy who got left behind, then came back with receipts. It's become a kind of myth now, passed around in forums, quoted in articles about accountability and family betrayal. But for me, It's not about revenge anymore. Not really. It's about remembering that being good doesn't mean being silent. That love without honesty is just control. That family doesn't mean loyalty to lies. Sometimes I still think about that porch, the suitcase, the way I sat there, waiting for them to come back, not knowing that they never planned to. I think about the group chat, the photos, the way they laughed without me, and I think about how easy it would have been to shrink, to disappear, to tell myself I didn't matter, but I didn't. I stood up. I turned my pain into something real, something unignorable. I took the parts of me they called dramatic, emotional, too much, and I used them to uncover the truth, and the truth set me free, even if it locked them up. Sometimes I replay that voicemail, the one where Rachel said, "We figured you'd understand," and now I do. I understand more than she ever thought I would. They didn't leave me because they forgot. They didn't overlook me. They didn't miss the knock at the door or the text or the time. No, they left me because I was the one person who couldn't be bought. The one person in the family who wouldn't look the other way, who wouldn't trade silence for comfort. They knew, deep down, that I'd see them eventually, that I'd notice what they were doing and wouldn't be able to swallow it. I was never part of the plan because I was the only one who couldn't be controlled, so yeah. They were right. I understood. And when I came back, not just into their lives, but into my own power, they finally understood who I was, too. Not the quiet kid, not the screw-up, not the disappointment, but the one who paid attention, the one who remembered, the one who told the truth when no one else would. My name is Ethan McCall. I'm 26, and if you're watching this, just know, sometimes being the forgotten one is exactly what makes you dangerous.